Wednesday, April 29th, 2020, MONERO 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So according to George Osborne, the former Chancellor of the Exchequer in the UK, Brexit divided Britain, and he hopes that COVID-19 conquers Britain. And that's what I'm going to be going over today. George Osborne did a Hoover Institution virtual policy briefing. I do follow the Hoover Institution YouTube channel. Why would I do that? Well, I'll tell you why I would do that. If you look at Sun Tzu and The Art of War, this is what he said about your enemies. And I quote Sun Tzu from The Art of War. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself, but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. So that's why I listen to what people that go on the YouTube channel for the Hoover Institution have to say. And right now, they're doing it online because they can't travel. George Osborne is a distinguished fellow at the Hoover Institution, believe it or not. And what's the Hoover Institution all about? Well, they're a globalist think tank at Stanford University in the US. And why do I say that? Well, because I've done my study. I know my enemy. There used to be a research fellow at the Hoover Institution, and you probably heard about him. Maybe not. His name was Anthony Cyril Sutton, Anthony C. Sutton. He was born in the UK. He did become an American citizen. And yes, he researched for that institution. But he started realizing through his research that Wall Street and the bankers were involved in all the major events of the 20th century. And what were those events? Well, it was the Bolshevik Revolution. Well, he's got a book, Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution, right? He's got a book, Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler, America's Establishment, Order of the Skull and Bones, National Suicide, Military Aid to the Soviet Union, Wall Street and FDR, The Best Any Money Can Buy, The Federal Reserve Conspiracy, The Created Energy Crisis, a little bit like Lindsay Williams, the non-energy crisis, the War on Gold, the manipulation on gold, Trilaterals over Washington, and he also wrote Trilaterals over America. Of course, he didn't stay at the Hoover Institution after he started finding this out. He had to leave. There's a good interview of Anthony C. Sutton with G. Edward Griffin. I'll try to find it and put it below in the description and also up in the cards. So today I will cover the market towards the end, but I thought it was important to cover this George Osborne interview with the Hoover Institution. For my American viewers who don't know who George Osborne was, well, Chancellor of the Exchequer in the UK is the equivalent of the Secretary of the Treasury, or in Europe, the equivalent of the Finance Minister. He was in that post from 2010 to 2016, or thereabouts in the UK, or 2010 to 2015, I don't remember exactly. So he's the guy that I always remember saying that by 2015, we'd have a balanced budget, no more deficits. And that was in 2010. And here we are right now, and we're going to have double-digit budget deficits. I know this crisis has augmented the deficit, but even before the crisis, we were already running deficits. The UK government, in the beginning of this year, they borrowed an extra £14 billion in the first 2 weeks of the year. So he didn't do a very good job. There are, of course, other stories about him, which I won't go over today, like how he backed Uber here in London and how he has a very high-paying job at BlackRock, the same company that's helping the Fed buy out all the junk that they're gonna be buying from the private sector, right? So I listened to most of this briefing. It's about 40 minutes. You may want to listen to the whole thing. But in the beginning, he said that Brexit divided the country, right? And it was his boss, David Cameron, who was prime minister, who called for that referendum. So there you go. They divided the country through that referendum. And now he's saying that COVID-19 is uniting the country. And for uniting, of course, you have to think of conquering the country. Country is too divided. We needed to bring people back together. He even mentions that the government now is very popular because of this crisis. I guess the question we need to ask, aside from knowing what these people are thinking, knowing what your enemy is thinking, is whether they're going to be successful. He seems to be quite convinced that things will be okay. So let's look at what he said about the economy, which is quite interesting, because he mentioned that all the government intervention, central banking intervention, which he says is unprecedented, it will need to be exited. And we know how exiting these plans are so difficult. The Fed tried to exit from the QE program, right, with QT. Look how that ended. I don't think there will be any exit from this. We're going to have more big government, more inflation. But one thing that he mentioned that's quite interesting, and I wanted to talk about that today, actually, because there's some big news yesterday about this. He says the furlough scheme will be difficult to exit from. I guess he hadn't heard of British Airways before he said that. He said that will be a difficult scheme because governments won't be very popular if people lose their jobs, are made redundant instead of being furloughed. But lo and behold, yesterday we got this announcement. It's not even the government that's exiting from these programs. It is companies. British Airways to cut 12,000 jobs as aviation outlook darkens. So instead of the British Airways workers being furloughed, and this is a big company, of course, you'd think they'd be able to keep these people on furlough. They've actually cut the jobs. So Mr. Osborne, you're behind the curve there. The companies are doing the job already that the government doesn't want to do. They're cutting the jobs. So 12,000 people, 30% of its workforce they're gonna lose their jobs. So that was interesting that he said that. So it just goes to show you that all these plans by these policymakers, by the globalists that we have running here in the UK, they're not going to work. He actually said that small businesses will disappear and it's going to create a social crisis. So they know what's going on, of course. The other thing he said is that Britain and Western Europe, or the Western world, they had no choice. They had to shut down the economy. And he said it was a deliberate policy, by the way. He also mentioned the Imperial College, that they're a very reputable university in London. Never mentioned the fact that they've gotten hundreds of millions from Bill Gates in the last few years, of course. And the other thing he said is that pandemics, if you look back through the centuries, they've had a disinflationary impact on society. But now with central banks, we need to be careful because we're injecting so much money into the system. I would say, though, he's not totally correct there, because if you look back at the Black Plague, or the Black Death, in the just before the Renaissance, in the Middle Ages, a lot of people died. I think a big percentage of the European population died. And that actually led to higher wages, because there was not as much, how can I say, labor out there. Not as many people to do the jobs. So that actually led to the death of feudalism, the beginning of the death of feudalism in Europe. So I wouldn't agree that much with him on that. What else does he mention that I think is quite interesting? Well, one of the most interesting things he talks about is the fact that because of all the big government intervention with the central bank to keep things running through this deliberate shutdown of the economy, we're going to be a lot poorer in the future. That's what he says. Those are his words. Because of all the debt that we're taking, all the deficits we're running. Of course, the deficits, annual deficits, they will add up on to the existing debt. That's how it works. They're not the same. The national debt is the addition of all the deficits that governments have run through time. That's what it is. And what about China? Because they talked about China. He said he actually said that he's more in line with Kissinger on China, that we need to try to work together with China, even though he admitted we need to pull them up on their abuses of human rights. But he thinks it will be a difficult handover. He thinks, of course, the American empire is on its last legs, and that the Chinese empire is emerging. That's what he talks about. There was a question from someone who was following this briefing towards the end about socialism and the government getting too big. And what he said, Osborne, was that if they didn't handle the exit from this crisis well enough, yes, the state could become bigger, we could have more socialism, but he was hoping, of course, that that wouldn't happen and we'd go back to a free market economy with small government, which is a pipe dream, I would say. I think this is just for public consumption. I'm not sure that's what he's really thinking. The other point that I'll finish off with, and this is to do with social media platforms like YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, because Osborne is the editor of the London Evening Standard. It's an evening paper. It comes out daily in London. And the interviewer asked him what he thought was going on social media because of the crisis and the fact that there's been some censorship of ideas. And he said, well, these platforms, they are editors. So he's basically saying that Facebook, YouTube, Twitter are editors, and that they're not like a public arena or the public market where people can go and talk and discuss things. I thought that was quite interesting to know that these people don't look at these social media platforms as like a place where we can go and give our own opinions, that our opinions are going to be edited by these people. And that doesn't make sense, because it's like saying a telephone company should edit your conversation. If you're talking on the telephone or your mobile phone to a friend and you start discussing these things, are they going to cut your line? So I thought that was quite interesting. So there you go. I thought that was the biggest point that he made there. Brexit divided the country. COVID, for him, hopefully will unite the country again. And he even used the fact that Boris Johnson got ill. It shows, he said, that the elite can also get ill. That's what he said. These are his words, not mine. So let's quickly look at where the markets are this morning. It's 8:38 a.m. London time. Stock market yesterday did not do very well towards the end of the day, finished slightly lower. Today we're higher. We've got the Dow futures up 180 at 24,280. S&P is up 1% at 28.94, and the Nasdaq 100 future is up 1.5%. Gold and silver, of course, got hit hard yesterday. Today we've got the Fed announcement and the press conference. Usually gold and silver don't do very well in the run-up to FOMC meetings. And then after the meeting, they bottom and go up. In 2015, December 2015, when gold bottomed at 1,046, that was the day of an FOMC meeting. Is that going to happen again? Maybe not, but there's a good chance that we could be near a bottom for precious metals. I could be wrong, of course, but it's always about probabilities if you're going to trade. If you're not going to trade, it doesn't matter. Talking about gold and silver, just wanted to let you know, especially for my UK viewers and European viewers on the continent, that gold investments, their stock is pretty good right now, especially of gold. Silver, not so much, but they've got most silver coins and bars. They don't have many silver Britannias at all. And one of the things Oliver told me, the reason why the premium is so large for silver is that the refiners don't like to refine silver coins because they don't make any money on it because the price is so low. So they're okay doing gold coins, refining gold coins. But he has to pay 40% premium on silver coins to the refiners. And he adds on another 10% for their margin, profit margin. So that's the story there. Refiners don't like to mint silver coins right now because it doesn't pay them that much. So they'd rather do gold coins because they make a lot more money on gold. Does that mean there's no shortage of silver out there? It's creating a shortage. And why? Well, because the price is too low in the end of the day. Because if the price of silver was higher, the mints would probably mint more coins because it would be worth for them to do so. So I wanted to put that out there. And yeah, use my promo code MONECO64. You get a small discount if you buy bullion from goldinvestments.co.uk. The details, of course, are below in the description. Yeah, gold has rebounded above 1700. We are at 1708 this morning, unchanged. The range has been 1703 to 1715. Silver's back above 15. I mean, they came back yesterday, actually. I thought that was quite good that they actually came back yesterday from below 1700 and 15 respectively. Silver right now is at 1520, up about 4 cents. The currencies, yeah, sterling is a little firmer, up 0.25% at 124.50. Euro is up 0.33% at 108.60. And the dollar is down 0.4 versus the yen at 106.43. So yeah, it looks like the dollar is weakening again here. Oil price has rebounded this morning. We're up 10%, which sounds a lot. Of course, any move right now sounds like a lot in percentage terms because we're at such low levels. WTI is at 1550. Bond market yesterday, we saw yields drop yesterday about 4 basis points, which is fairly substantial, the 10-year. And right now, we're down another 1 basis point at 60 basis points. So there you go. Know your enemy. Know yourself as well, of course. Just like Sun Tzu said, if you don't know your enemy, you don't know yourself, you're never going to win any battles or any wars. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. Please share it far and wide. Think about subscribing to the channel if you haven't yet. And you can also follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Hive, Library now as well, BitChute, and Steemit. I wish you all a great day. Take care. Bye.